You're listening to She's the Business podcast.
How often would you say that you're living in your thriving zone? Do you even know what your thriving zone is or how you might get there? Well, if these are questions that you have on your mind, today's episode has been designed exactly for you. We're going to dive into what does it mean to live in your thriving zone? How can you assess whether you might be in it or not? And some of the techniques and skills that you might be able to use in order to get there and be feeling like you're actually living your best life right now. Stay tuned. This episode is coming right up.
Hi, I'm your host, Jessica Osborne, and in my 23 years of business and marketing, I've built many brands to become multi-billion-dollar companies. And just in the last 10 years, I've built 2 online businesses of my own from my dining room table with 2 little babies running around at my feet. I've made it my mission to inspire you to get out of your own way and become the successful business owner who's living the lifestyle you really desire without all the hustle. This is She's the Business podcast, made by women for women. This is your weekly dose of motivation and inspiration.
My very special guest today is Alison Dougall. Now, Alison is actually one of my beautiful members of my Business Jam program. She has had a career as a psychologist and a really successful one, providing therapy to people, and has recently shifted into being a coach and having her own coaching business, also helping those same people, but in a slightly different way. Instead of therapy, Alison is now supporting women in and around their 50s to confidently step into the best years of their life. She's really unapologetic in her opinion that this stage of life, women have the most wisdom, experience, and inner resources to create a better future than ever before. And the extensive potential for these years are as yet unexplored territory. So she is helping her clients to go from feeling really blah about life and just like they're living into a default future that has been created for them, or maybe that has just been the way it is, into feeling like they're living the best years of their life, and that is through their own choice about how they're living them. So how can you get into your thriving zone? How can you feel like right now your life is 100% on track to being exactly what you want to be living and experiencing that on a day-to-day basis? That thriving feeling surely is like none other. So without further ado, let me play the interview for you. Excellent. Well, I have here with me today Alison Dougall. Alison, welcome to She's a Business podcast. I'm really happy to have you here with me today.
Thank you, Jess. It's really nice to be here.
Yeah, amazing. Now, could you tell everybody, because you'll explain it far better than I ever would, exactly, what you do in your business and who you help, what it is that you really help people with?
Yes. So I am a coach, a wellbeing coach, pivoted recently I've been working as a psychologist for a lot of years. And so I've brought those skills and that experience into coaching. Mm-hmm. And I love working with women in and around their 50s so that they can confidently step into the best years of their life, helping them navigate mind chatter and find peace and connect with their deep desires and create direction moving forward.
Yeah, amazing. And so what led you to focus on women at that particular life stage? What have you seen that is happening at that point in time where they're really needing some support or feeling like they're not currently living into the best years of their life?
Well, a whole lot of things, really. So it's been interesting to kind of pick out the important pieces. Mm-hmm. But when I was working as a psychologist in therapy, I noticed that there were a lot of women around their 50s that had come for therapy, been referred for therapy, but didn't really need therapy. They were high-functioning people. They were doing really well, had professional careers. And it was really more what we were doing was coaching, and it was more of a tweak, those kind of schemas or life traps that were holding people back, giving a tweak to address that And then people were really often flying again.
Oh, amazing.
So that was one clue for me. The other clue was that the year that I turned 50, I was burnt out. I was working in a corporate role. And looking back now, I see that was partly about the organisation and partly about my schemas and life traps that were kind of getting me caught up in working in this really driven way, in a way that wasn't sustainable, which I'd been doing all along, but it really kind of took that experience for me to go, oh, I'm doing it again. I've fallen back into that life trap, and really do something about that for myself.
Yeah.
I think as well, having experience coaching myself, I really saw the limitations of therapy. I mean, there's a lot of overlap between therapy and coaching, but really seeing the potential for coaching to really broaden the horizons of our future just kind of really made me go, that's really what I want to be doing. And with this group of women, because they've got so much to offer, so many strengths. Often really the contribution is often really unrecognized. But I think there's so many strengths and so much resilience there. And we don't really need people to recognise it for us, but we can recognise it for ourselves and really own those strengths and abilities and make the most of what we've already got on board. So that was another really big part of wanting to work in this area.
Yeah, amazing. And so tell me a bit about what you see happening right now with the women. You know, you said they've been referred to you for therapies. They must have been thinking that there's some problem, like they've gone to their GP and their GP's referred them on to a psychologist. So what are they experiencing in their life right now that's kind of prompted this action or, you know, a desire to change something? Like, what is it that's actually happening?
I think in that case, it was often something situational, like getting a promotion at work and working in a system that wasn't great, and kind of maybe feeling like they weren't bringing their best to that. So life changes, relationship changes. A few people, like people in my membership program that have experiencing burnout, and again that kind of change in role and extra challenges, and again those patterns that have kind of been getting us through but really aren't sustainable long term. And also just people wanting to really feeling like they're making the most of the time they've got, kind of really optimizing their health and well-being. And also women that are just know, like deep in their bones, that they don't want to get to 80 and end up with a whole lot of health issues, where at this point it's just such a great opportunity to be improving our lifestyle and getting through those you know, the barriers that get in the way of living the lifestyle that we want, a healthy lifestyle, and just knowing that this is a real opportunity. I've been trying to do it, hasn't quite been working for me. I've had these barriers again, these kind of life trap schemas that are getting in the way. And quite often it's really just a tweak to be able to help people get past that and get to that well-being that they've been looking for.
Yeah, I can really imagine, you know, just hearing you speak about it then. You kind of grow up and then you become a young adult, you start working, you know, life, you maybe have a family, whatever, and you're probably living this life and you're living in the moment, and things build and build and build. And, you know, I'm not that far off 50 myself. It's a handful of years to go. But, you know, I think that when we're getting into this point, it's starting to think, well, you know, I'm not getting any younger. Like, you really recognize that your best years, you know, probably are behind you, but yet you don't want it to be the case that you don't want your life to decline. And actually you're like, well, I want to make the most of what I've got, and I want to make the most of now, because I don't want to get to the point when I'm 80 and be looking back and thinking, why didn't I do something more that I really feel empowered by, or, you know, and love, you know. And I can really imagine that, you know, I guess in the back of our minds mentally, when we're getting to this sort of point, you start to have those questions like, what am I doing with my life? What is this? Where am I? Why am I, you know, working hard? And maybe that's just not fulfilling you anymore like it used to, because you've spent all of that time doing that. You've been working in that job for so long. and it's just not probably filling your cup the way that it may have done when you were younger. And I can really see, you said, well, it's not that there was anything wrong with their lives. They're successful people, really high functioning, there's no like mental health issues going on, but you're probably just feeling blah. Would that be really, like, how else would you describe it? That's clearly not a clinical term.
Yeah, look, you're right. And quite often it's a transition time for people with careers and moving up the ladder, or with relationships ending. And, and sometimes it's hormones affecting health. And I think you're really quite right as well. We kind of know what our 20s, 30s, there's kind of particular milestones for those areas, and whether we've followed them or not, it's like there kind of doesn't seem to be there's a gap when you get to 50, and I kind of got there and realized that I didn't have thoughts about what that might look like. I didn't have expectations that it could be a time that we could thrive. And I think, my generation of people that are kind of at that age now, it seems like a whole new territory, because, we're more educated, whether formally or informally. We've kind of got greater connectivity in the world than ever. And so there's so much opportunity, but we didn't necessarily have role models that were kind of had the same opportunities as us. Our parents, our mothers at 50, my mum was in a completely different space. Yeah. I think we didn't grow up with knowledge of, neuroplasticity and how much choice there is about, changing the structure and the functioning of our brain. And I think it's a really quite a hidden age as well. It's only recently that we're kind of getting female heroes in movies and sport, and very few of those are women this age. So it is like, it does feel like new territory for us. And I feel like now I realize it's our opportunity to make the most of that and invent it to be the way we want it to be. But, when I got to 50, there was kind of like this, when you get through 20, you get through 30, 40, you kind of know what the milestones are and you choose to go that way or not. 50, it's kind of like, there's kind of this image that it's just declined from there, when it's really not. There is so much opportunity, and there's, a lot of people are getting a little bit more freed up with, kids being teenagers. There's that kind of sandwich also of, caring for elder folk for a lot of people. But I think as well, the other thing is that probably women generally, but women my age, is that we don't, no one else has recognised all that we've contributed in unpaid caring roles as a leader, and we haven't recognised it for ourselves. And I think we're so good at caring for other people that we don't and we're not that great at turning around and caring for ourselves. And I don't think we've been brought up in an era that highlights the importance of that. I think it's really convenient for society for us to be doing all of this, but no one's saying that's great, thank you. We kind of just do it, and we do it unrecognised. But we also haven't been necessarily taught the importance of that. Like we kind of know that it's good to look after ourselves and do self-care, but the importance of really looking after our well-being is about our health in the future. It's about our quality of life, and it's about what we're role modelling for, our friends, our family, the younger women in our life.
Yeah.
I remember I started on that.
No, it's amazing. I've been loving listening in. I can really hear so many things in that, and what you've mentioned from a couple of perspectives is that, having no role models of really what to do at this time of life, to me it sounded like, well, that you're not young, that you're not old, but you're kind of in this zone in the middle. It's like you're in this gap, right, of like, well, what is this? I'm in no man's land. Exactly. What am I meant to be? What is this about? And you're probably feeling like, well, hey, I don't feel old, and I feel like I can still do lots of things. And so what is this part of life all about? And maybe it's that, motivation or desire to be feeling things and doing things. and not to be, you're not putting yourself in the old bucket yet, as you well shouldn't be, because, you've got so much more life to give. But I could imagine just how you can feel so lost there with like, well, what is this actually meant to be? Because we've never really thought about what you're going to do in your 50s. Everyone talks about, well, when I retire, I'm going to do this. So, and obviously we all know what we want to do in our 20s and 30s because we thought about it. And then, this sort of zone in the middle where I can just see that it's like you must have some burning desire inside to kind of figure out, like, what is this? How can I make the most out of this time? And then saying as well about the role models, that you want to actually be a role model for the younger generation, and actually let's create some role models around what you do in your 50s. And like, what are the rules? Well, there probably really aren't any rules. So, hey, guess what? You're in this place where you can create them. Like, how amazing is that?
Exactly. And I think there's so much strength and wisdom in women our age, and we've certainly got the capability to do that, and we can do that better, when we join together and share where we're going and what's important to us. But I think we've got all that we need. We don't need input from elsewhere, but I think we just have to realize that and have the mechanism to be able to and the skills and kind of, again, those tweaks to just be deciding, where do I want to go and how do I do that? For some women, it is like it's a small tweak, like, this real incentive of just really getting my lifestyle optimized so that I know that I'm kind of living my healthiest life and I can do that into the future. And for some people, it's something quite a bit bigger than that. And it's I really want to, I've been working in this industry that's not very generative. I really would like to do something that feels important and like it's giving back, while I've got the time and energy up my sleeve. So it really varies from something big to something that's just kind of feels more aligned for people to themselves.
Yeah, I can see that. And I think that is the individual, where you're at right now and what your situation is and what you want. But is that one of the hardest questions that people actually don't know how to answer in the beginning? So tell me a bit about, so I'm the person, I'm in my 50s. I'm kind of at this place where I'm like, well, on paper, my life looks really great, but I'm just feeling a bit like, meh, okay, is this it? Is this my default future I'm living into? Well, what if I don't really want that default future? What if I think there could be something more? Where do we start? Like, it just feels so big, doesn't it? And it's so kind of conceptual and high level. I can imagine that that's where the GP's going, right, well, you need to go and see a psychologist or something. But you're saying actually it's not therapy, it's actually coaching, because there's a process in which you're going to take people through it's more like self-discovery, isn't it? So tell me a bit about how does that start? What do you do at the beginning? What's that kind of general journey that they go on?
Yeah, sure. So it's I think the layers kind of all mix in with each other. But what I really like to do is we do quite a lot of work with our future self and using the right hand side of our brain, visualization, really connecting with who we are in the future, living into that. The research shows that the more connected we are with our future self, then the better quality of life we're going to have and the more we're likely to achieve that. So I really love doing that with people. It really opens people's eyes, and it's the kind of thing you have to do to see the power of it, and it really opens up possibilities for people.
Yeah. So what's the difference like? Because I think I'm getting the thread of is it's different to sort of saying, well, I want this and having it as a thing that you want in the future. So explain to me what the difference is in actually really seeing, but maybe stepping into the shoes of your future self. What does that look like? I'll hand over to you. I don't know how to ask the question.
What does it look like in terms of what we do? Or
I guess give an example of what that difference is.
Yeah. So, and I get from a theory point of view, what we're doing when we kind of say, oh, this is what I'd like in the future, we're kind of using this external cerebral cortex part of our brain, and there's a lot more layers to our brain than that, but it's that logical part of our brain. And it makes sense of the future by what's happened in the past. So it really limits kind of the possibilities that are going to be opened up. But when we do, we use a visualization to start with, a bunch of cues, exploration of that conversation, rechecking in with that, making goals from that, and rechecking in with that. We do, I've got a resource that, and I do it weekly. I think most of my members tend to do a little bit of weekly, more monthly, and we just have done a quarterly review. And people just get so much value from that. And so, and in terms of what's different from just using that kind of outer thinking part of the brain, it really uses our whole body. It's like athletes that use visualizations to imagine themselves succeeding and visualizing that over and over. So that then is encoding in our nervous system. It's encoding in some ways as though that experience has actually happened to us. So instead of, thoughts of, oh, I could never do that, when you've visualized it, the brain becomes open to the more possibilities. And the more we do that, the more it becomes open to.
Ah, amazing. So can you give us can be a hypothetical example, but, what kind of thing might you then decide as your future self? And then how might you see yourself already sort of stepping into that?
So I guess the best example would probably be for myself, because I don't always know. I know a bit about the goals of my members and what they've achieved already, but I don't always necessarily know the intricacies of their future self. But yeah, so for me, that was a really helpful process when I decided to pivot from psychology into coaching, because like you were saying a while ago, that you kind of having that, you work towards a career, and I've been through a few careers. I've been a nurse. I worked as an occupational health manager. I've become a psychologist. Psychologist was a thing that I felt that I always wanted to do, but I really kind of felt like I love the skills and I loved it, but I didn't think that was sustainable for me in the long term. So when I kind of had this idea of transitioning to coaching, I had all these, I couldn't do that. I couldn't do this. I couldn't be on a podcast talking to you that other people would listen to, because as psychologists, we don't promote ourselves. We take ourselves out of the picture. So that was really the opposite of that. So a whole lot of barriers, again, those schemas, those life traps of what you can and can't do. And then for me, kind of being able to visualize it and know, kind of giving my brain the opportunity to go, oh, that's what it would look like. So you're a little bit familiar with it. We've got this, I can't think of the right word, but this with selective attention, where we take in the information that confirms our biases. And so those biases of mine that were being confirmed all those times suddenly started turning around. I was taking on different information about what was possible. And then the actions are a really important part of it, because once you've kind of seen it and you've made goals, and the goals are really not to beat ourselves up with, they're about that compass of the direction forward. They can change at any time, but once you start taking small steps in those directions, so once I started putting things into place, I actually had those actual experiences of small successes, which added up to me going, oh, maybe I can actually do this whole thing. And so that's a really nice way. And again, that re-educates our nervous system and all the layers of our brain that this is possible for me. So, and I know for my members, they kind of came in a little bit skeptical to say, I don't know if this is possible. And now they're just going miles ahead of anything that their outcomes have just exceeded anything I thought they would get. And I think it probably has exceeded what they thought they would get as well.
Wow. So it would be like thinking, okay, well, I imagine myself as being someone, who's fit and healthy, and, I love being outdoors and exercising and kind of having that. So I guess going crazy with your vision, like, who is the ultimate me that I really want to be? But then what I'm hearing that you're saying, it's not like this thing that you kind of have in the back of your mind that you want to be, but it's like, okay, well, how do I start taking steps towards that now? Well, what would that person do? Would they get up in the morning and would they go for a walk in the morning before they have breakfast? Or, and like you said, it's like, it's not like you're going to suddenly switch and do it 100% of the time every day straight away, but those small actions, if that becomes then what you told your brain, well, this is the new normal, this is because this is who I am now, then you're going to start doing it more and more because it'll just feel more natural to do it, wouldn't it? Rather than operating from your current place of normal, which is sort of like you have to change.
That's exactly right. It's like once we've got this picture of where we want to be, we can reverse engineer, how do I get there? And starting with goals for this year and goals for 3 months' time. Again, it's not a kind of, when I say that, I kind of feel like this when I'm back in this corporate environment and these things that you have to do, and it's more of a maybe a toy, a tool that just heads you in a direction, and you can change that direction at any time, and you do change that direction because your future self in 3 months' time is different to where it is today, and particularly if you're on this road of growth and discovery, in 3 months' time, people do feel really different.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's important to, the differentiation of goals from rules, or being like, well, this is a goal or a KPI that we have to hit like at work. It's more like, well, this is the game and I'm defining the rules of the game, as in this is the game of me playing my future self. I just had that funny moment of thinking, well, it's a bit like with Second Life or whatever, where we created our avatars. I don't know if anyone did that for like 5 seconds when it came up in the 2000s, but it's sort of like you then are creating your own rules of the new life, which, nothing's going to happen if you don't play by the rules every day. It's kind of up to you, isn't it? But it defining them is what takes it from being conceptual to it being, well, this is actually the path, and this is, how I'm going to get there and actually make it a reality, which is so empowering. So can you tell me, do you have any stories of a change that you've seen in, any of your members, like something that they're doing now that they didn't even realize they would be doing? Like they're just like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I'm already doing this, or I've already achieved that. I'd love to hear, because I think it's just amazing to hear what people have been able to do. Do you have anything that comes to mind?
Yes, I do. I have so I have 2 programs, a 10-week program, and then I've run that as a pilot program, and then most of the people came into the membership, which is really nice because I get, I always get that as a psychologist to kind of see people's progress long term. But I have, and one of the layers of the way I work is working in the thriving zone. So we've got the thriving zone at the top. I could picture it like a ladder, the thriving zone. In the middle, there's kind of the activated zone, that kind of fight, flight, stress zone. And at the bottom is kind of a immobilized zone, a bit switched off, a bit kind of not taking so much action. So we kind of, and I think people have found that really helpful, just being able to recognize which zone they're in. But we also look at what are the things that help me get up the ladder, what things take me down the ladder. And I have a client who just not long after we started was given, she'd been working in a kind of really, I don't know what the right word is, like I'd say high-powered job, like a lot of responsibility.
Yeah.
And then and she was doing, she said she was on like a highway to burnout, and then she was given an extra team. So like the people she was looking after was doubled, and and it wasn't an area that had been the guy kind of came with a legacy, the area that she kind of picked up. But she's working at this really high level and having started feeling like she was in burnout, and she says, I'm in the thriving zone and I have been every day for the last 3 months.
So what did she change? What shifted for her? Because is she still working in this high-powered job? Like, okay, so she's got and really,
she's really getting it all sorted out, like the legacy, and she's changed direction for people. So, and like I think it's a whole combination of things again, because we, that all the elements of my program don't just work, like I say, with this logical outer brain. So it's a whole mind body change. It's this combination of, picturing a different future, being able to reverse engineer that, shifting value, look at what your behavior indicates is at the top of your values list, and then deciding what you want to be at the top of your values list. And we do quite a lot of, we include mindfulness in a really user-friendly way. So people can, we initially went through a program to introduce different practices to people, and people can use it flexibly of doing a bit of practice every day, or they can just use it on the go. And the really nice thing about that is it does integrate our body and all the layers of our mind. And that ties into something you were saying before, in that it really helps us get to know like what we would like for our future self. Whereas initially we may not know. We can kind of do activities to kind of help us get in touch with that. But the more we get to kind of reconnect with ourselves, connect our body and our mind and our nervous system, I think that whole package really helps people to get closer to where they want to be. And clearly it's been really successful for her.
Wow. Yeah, it just sounds incredible, especially because she's still in that same situation. But then to feel like instead of she's, operating down at that low level where everything's hard and, probably just feels stressed out and, like you said, on the verge of burnout, to feel like she's thriving, that is really incredible. Like, what a shift. And you're saying it's kind of like it's a lot about just perspective, approach, and then doing some, exercises that you can do anywhere to help the body calm down and regulate the nervous system. But I also heard in that as well, and, correct me if I'm wrong, but you said it was about recognizing what are the values that you're living into right now and what are the values that you want to live into.
Yes.
And I think that to me, I was like, that really spoke to me, because I thought, I think so often we're just doing it as we have always done, or as society tells us that we should do. And that real disconnect might be when you're feeling, without even realizing it, is just that you're not living into the values that you as a human being innately have and feel. And like the one that comes to mind for me, of course, is time. I think, anyone. And that only really became a massive value for me once I became a mother. I think I can definitely draw a line in the sand and say prior to that, my time was not the highest value. I had other values. I used to burn the midnight oil. I used to value having fun, and, I still value fun a lot. But time became incredibly important as soon as I became a parent. And now, that really dictates and drives a lot of my decision making around my life, around my business, around what I say yes to, what I don't, even down to the smallest detail of how I structure my business and what I choose to do or not do, because there's so many options. It's like you can almost do anything you want. I could run this same business in a totally different way, but the way I do it is because I'm basing it on my value of time, and time not working actually being the most important part. It is, I love my work. I love working with my clients, and I get so much fulfillment from it. But fulfillment, like the entirety of my being, is actually about having a really good, I wouldn't even say balance, because a lot of people think that means 50-50, but it's more than, it's the right balance for me of personal time with my kids, time outdoors, time relaxing, doing things that feed my soul and my spirit and my health. And so that is living into the values, right? And so, it's like where you feel like, yes, this is, how much better could life be? Well, you feel like, wow, it's actually really, really good. Like there's always somewhere new I want to go. And, we've always got goals in mind, but it's like when you're feeling like this is great, I'm actually in a really great space, it's probably because you're aligned to whatever your core values are as a person. And yeah, it's really interesting. I think to me, time is like an obvious one. I think a lot of people probably value time, but what are some of the other ones? What values have you seen people kind of realize this is a value for theirs, and then think, well, how do I integrate that into my life? Or how do I make that something that helps me to then move up to feeling like I'm in the thriving zone?
Yeah, look, and it's a really good question, because I think all of the women I've worked with, health is a high value, high priority value. But I think as well, there can be things that get in the way, even if we know that's what we want to be valuing. Sometimes it can be really hard to, in actuality, have that at the top of their list, going like, I value health, but some things are really hard. For me, years ago, I really didn't have security on my values list, but I was acting like from a real scarcity mentality, and I had to really work on bringing that down. But for women, say, for example, who value health, there can be things that really get in the way of enacting that. So it's, again, these kind of tweaks to our mindset or our schema, these life traps that kind of put a lens on what we can do, what we can't do, that get in the way of our confirmation bias that says, what we can and can't do based on the past. One of my members was saying that she had this goal that she wanted to get up and walk every day. And she was saying, I love walking. When I get up and do it, I really enjoy it. But she kind of had this barrier that was stopping her doing that. And when we drilled down on it, there was kind of quite a few things contributing to that. But one of those things had been being shamed by her father about body image. And that was in this ironic way, that was really one of the things that was holding her back. It was kind of like, under the, what's under an iceberg, these things that go on that we don't know are even taking place. And when we kind of have the right tools to kind of put them to the surface, as soon as she could go, oh, heck, I didn't even realize that was there, and put a name to it and release that. Yeah, the next day she was off. We got her to kind of just report back on how she'd gone, because if she hadn't gone walking the next day, there might have been more barriers that we hadn't gotten to.
Yes.
But she did go, and she sent us this photo of a beautiful sunrise. And I thought, well, no wonder you love it, and you tell me you love it, but you're not actually doing it. And there's a really good reason for why there was that disconnect for her. And I think, and I've experienced that myself as well, these kind of hidden things. And I think for a lot of women, we can be labeling ourselves as lazy or, not being able to meet our goals. But in fact, there's often really good reasons under the surface of why we can't meet them. Sometimes we just need a little bit of help to bring them to the surface and let them go.
Wow, that makes so much sense, because I was just thinking, there's probably all the surface level stuff that, logically you would know. You go, well, I want to get up in the morning, so I should get to bed early at night so that I don't feel too tired, and, probably a few other lifestyle things that are like obvious. But then that's so interesting that it's like it wasn't that stuff that's probably on the top of the iceberg above the water that you'd think are the obvious things. Well, hey, you stayed up really late. Of course you can't get up in the morning. Of course it doesn't feel like something you should do. Or maybe you had too much to drink or whatever it was. And, you're not in that right zone to feel like walking in the morning. But to be diving in that deep and finding something like that, that's actually then causing this disalignment with the values, that she knew what she wanted and she's not doing it. I think that's incredibly powerful. So are people kind of uncovering this level of depth in their initial kind of 10 weeks, or is this something that's an ongoing process where you're kind of figuring out what are the goalposts and what are the values, and how can you start aligning? And then is it sort of the deeper work where you're starting to dig in and uncover some of the stuff that you didn't even realize was there that's stopping you? What are people looking at in terms of their journey? What are they able to do in that initial 10 weeks?
So the 10 weeks is a really introduction to a whole lot of tools and techniques that people can take away and use on their own, which is what I really love about the whole program I've put together. It's kind of really a science-based self-help techniques that we can really use to grow in the directions that we want to. So the techniques we use were kind of introduced, but something like that's at that depth is more challenging to really get to in a more self-help kind of way. So that was in the follow-up membership that's available for people. Once we have kind of 2 sessions each month. One of them connects us back to our future self and reviews, looks at not so much that horizon to where we want to go, but that distance between where we've come from, which is really good for our future self, because we often discount that and go, oh, I haven't achieved much. And then when you look at it, you go, actually, there's a heap of stuff I've achieved I haven't given myself credit for. So that's the best way to measure goals. But the other session that we do each month is some content and so like some information, skills building, and some space for a bit of coaching. And interestingly, there was when I did this work one-on-one with this person, there's someone else that's a member that really related to it and got benefit from being a part of that, being kind of an observer of that process, but has said to me, I really need to do more on that. So we're going to be doing that.
Yeah, that's amazing. And, just thinking about it, you can't just suddenly start running before you've started to walk. So it's like that 10 weeks kind of solidifying, right, this is where we're going. We're getting used to doing the things and putting yourself in that place. And then I think only once you're there, you can kind of start to dig down deeper and uncover some of that other stuff. So that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So thanks for clarifying. And I think it's good to kind of have that, let's be realistic about what's actually achievable and not be hard on ourselves when we're like, well, hey, I've now decided who I am and why aren't I being it straight away? Or why isn't this working in the space of 2 weeks or something like that? It's like, well, actually, we're talking about your whole life here, aren't we? So, having a little bit of time where you're spending on a bit of a journey where you're shifting from, living into your default future right now to living into a whole new future. It's not something that'll just happen overnight.
No, that's exactly right. And I think, people, the progress that people made in that 10 weeks, like I said, it really exceeded even my expectations of what was possible for people. And so what they did take away from that was this system of, connecting with their future self, the review of it, mindfulness skills that they could do kind of on the go or make a more formal practice, this sense of the thriving zone. How do I know when I'm in each zone, and how do I spend more time thriving? And so it's a problem-based, check in with myself. Where am I at? Building those connections between mind and body. We know with neuroplasticity that the changes do take time. They're like drips of water adding up in a bucket. So the more we do something, the more benefit we get from it. So clearly in this case, the 10 weeks that I did was kind of over. In that case, it was over a few more weeks because Christmas popped up. So we had some weeks off over Christmas and people could use that to implement. So it was probably over a longer period of time. There were 10 sessions. So clearly that was enough for, the skills and the neuroplasticity to be kicking in. Now, I think the reason most people signed up for the membership afterwards as well is partly that company of like-minded people being able to be open and share. It's partly the implementation of those, the kind of keeping the momentum with those things that they've learned. It's really easy for those things to drop off and be put on the back burner because we're not great at prioritizing ourselves necessarily, and we're all really busy. I think at that there was, people have mentioned the accountability of, to themselves, and because they know they're going to be coming back and talking about these things with the group. And also there's space in that for more a little bit of group one-on-one work. So one-on-one work with other people. Hot seats. So people are benefiting that, get the individual attention, but then other people benefit as well. And it kind of makes a really nice connection space as well.
Yeah. Oh, that just sounds amazing. I can really see how, it can be so easy just to put yourself last or on the back burner or think, well, I'm going to do this and focus on it for 10 weeks and then finish. And then suddenly you're just back to where you were, maybe not all the way back to where you were before, but to be forgetting about doing the things and having that accountability and being part of something that really helps you to I think it's like staying present and aware of what you're doing,
Yes.
because you're kind of still engaged and thinking about it because you're in that environment. I think that is so beneficial. So that's wonderful that you're doing that. Congratulations. I'm really excited for you. So if people are listening right now thinking, wow, you're just speaking to me, or, that's exactly where I'm at, or, they're wanting to find out a bit more about you or follow you and your story, how can they best find you? Where are you hanging out on social media?
So I'm just really getting those started with social media. So on Instagram, I'm at Alison Dougall Coaching. That's ALISONDOUGALL Coaching, or one word. Mm-hmm. Facebook, Alison Dougall Coaching is the page I've got set up. And then my website is alisondougall.com.
Amazing. Well, I'll link all of that up in the show notes so people can click through and find you. But thanks so much for sharing that with us today, Alison. Do you have anything final that you wanted to mention or share as a takeaway point, or leaving message? We'll say.
Yeah, look, thanks so much for having me. It's been a real pleasure talking about the stuff that I love. But I guess, the thing I would say for women of any age, particularly women of my age, is, I didn't know about, neuroplasticity, and I know it's kind of can be quite a commonplace word these days. But, when I studied nursing, I was told that from a potential for our brain change, it was all downhill as we age, that we just lost brain cells with aging and alcohol use. And it's absolutely not the case. At any age, we can be growing those neuronal, in some parts of the brain, increases the number of cells in areas. And at the very least, it can make more connections, like Christmas tree lights, but making more connections, more cells talking to other cells, which improves their efficiency and abilities. And that's available to us at any age. And, we do that largely with where we put our attention and what we're focusing on. And that goes on whether we're using that capacity or not. So if we're not using our minds, our brains, then we're kind of losing capacity. And the more we do with it, the more we're growing it. And there's so much, it's just, we can really underestimate the capacity of change. And so that was what I would really say to everyone is, there's so much change available in our brains, which impacts our life, which impacts what we see as our potential, which impacts what we see as our future and what we believe we can do. So, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's amazing. What a great thing to even be thinking and leaving with, because it's not, I guess, what we have been culturally kind of fed.
No.
It's always all doom and gloom about getting older and, all of the mind-related deterioration that can happen. That's really amazing to hear that. And I guess what I heard in that is, that we're doing new things and creating new connections. And so it's sort of about, putting yourself in new places and thinking about different things that's helping to create the brain activity that would help it to grow. And, maybe sitting around watching TV all day is potentially not. Not that I'm saying anything bad about watching TV, but, the choice of the amount of time that you might spend doing it versus doing something that helps you grow as a person. And I love that it's sort of available at any age. That's really inspiring and motivating. So thank you, Alison. This has been great. I appreciate your time, and thank you for sharing this and bringing this important conversation to us, because I really hate for people to be feeling like you're in a gap of not being young, not being old, and like, well, just where am I in this no man's land? Let's not be in no man's land. Let's actually be in your thriving zone and feeling like you're having the best years of your life, and you're making it all possible. So thank you. I think this has been amazing.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been great talking about it.
Awesome. Okay, and I will be talking to you all next week with another great episode. I'm sure you can't wait for it. I'll speak to you then. Wasn't that amazing? Now, if you loved what Alison was talking about today and feel like you would like to start to get clear on what the best years of your life might look like, then she has something special for you today. It is absolutely free, costs you nothing. You can download it right now from her website. And that is 4 powerful questions that you can answer about what your best years would look like, so that you can start to create that blueprint for yourself and shift what you're doing right now into the place where you can start to live into your best life. So if you'd like that, then the link is here in the show notes. Please just scroll down, click through, and you can download her worksheet and get started on imagining the best years of your life. And thank you, Alison, for providing that.
Now, if you're a coach, a consultant, or a service-based business owner, and you're really tired of being told to do this or that, implementing someone else's method, all of the steps, and then still finding that it's really, really hard to attract the right clients, you're not hitting your profit goals, you're miles away from it, and it's all just feeling super time-consuming and hard work, and maybe you just don't even like what they've told you to do. Like maybe they've said, go and cold DM people who you find on Instagram, and you are just not in that energetic space of the cold DM. Well, guess what? This just means that instead of following someone's method, which has worked for them, it's actually about defining your core strategy that underpins these methods that you might use and actually makes any method you choose successful, so you can choose the ones that you like the best. Imagine that. You don't have to do those cold DMs at all. In fact, I highly recommend not doing it. You can choose whatever works for you, and also knowing how to choose the right thing so that you've got a flow with no gaps, with no breaks in the journey where people are just dropping through that hole and never making it through to the end. Well, yes, there is a way to do that, right? This is called a strategic framework, where you've got the pieces and there's a way that you put it together. You connect these pieces so that there is flow in your business, so there's alignment with you and alignment with your goals. And this framework I've developed is called the Jam Plan. I offer it to you inside Business Jam, which is my program. Now, this is a coaching program with online content, with live coaching, with training, and with a beautiful supportive community, which I think is so important, that you're not with all this information and figuring it out on your own and feeling like, well, am I doing it right? Am I not doing it right? What is going on? Actually having other people who are there with you, who have similar businesses, who can be your cheer squad, who can give you that support, motivation, and actually also give you some real good feedback as well as getting advice and coaching, of course, from me in the program. Now, that's all waiting for you inside Business Jam. The doors currently, right this moment, are closed. However, they will be opening again, and sooner than you really know. They'll be coming up really soon. So get your name on the wait list now. Now, I have a priority wait list. And this priority waitlist is for those who think, I really want to be first. I like to be first in line. I like to get the best seats. I like to have all of the best things, the VIP room at the club with the champagne and the canapes. I like that kind of treatment. Well, if that's you, get your name on the priority waitlist, please. And you will be first in line. You'll be first to know. There will be some extra things coming your way that the people who are in the main line won't know about. So get your name on the priority wait list. You will be first to hear about Business Jam when it's opening next, and to be the first ones able to take that step forward and come into my inner circle and really think about, well, it might not be right for you, but you'll be able to make that choice because you'll be there, you'll be hearing about it before anybody else. So no obligation, of course. You can just put your name on the list. You can still decide at the time whether it's right for you, whether you want to join or not. But by putting your name on the list, it means that you're obviously going to be first and best dressed if you decide to take that step forward. So head over to jessicaosborne.com/business jam waitlist and get your name on the list. I've dropped that link as well below for you in the show notes. So you can go ahead and click on that and get your name on the list right now. And look out for the first goodies that come your way as the VIPs on my priority list. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of She's the Business podcast. I hope that you've been enjoying it as much as I have in creating the content to bring to you. So I really appreciate you being here. I appreciate your presence and your attention. Now, if you love the podcast, or maybe you just loved today's episode, then I would absolutely appreciate it if you would go to Apple Podcasts, scroll down, hit the 5 stars, and then leave me a short review about what it was that you really enjoyed in this episode, or maybe in the podcast overall. And when I receive those reviews, then I love to give those reviewers a shout out on my future podcast episodes. So you never know, you may hear your name getting a shout out in a future episode if you do that. So thank you once again for your time, and I'll see you next time on She's the Business.